Hello, and welcome to this lecture, the second in a three-part series on brand management. This lecture follows the business branding phenomenon into the political market. My name is Željko Zidarić. I am the founder of the Civic Innovation Incubator. Brands are a manifestation of enduring values. If political parties are doing real brand management, then we are in a genuine competition of ideas that speak to real differences of opinion, priorities, and philosophies. Like brand managers in the commercial market, political parties need to have a long-term commitment to values that represent their consumers, or better to say, constituencies and voters. Brand management is a tool that strives for values alignment. It is not about psychological manipulation. Every tool can be used for good or bad. You decide how you want to use it. The goal of this video will be to determine whether the concept of brand is applicable to the political markets. We will delve a little bit deeper into what brand is, how it might overlap with politics, what is the nature of politics, what's the nature of brand equity, and what is brand development. In the political market, every 4 or 5 years, through our votes, we need to purchase the services of a governance team. Unlike other goods or services where we each choose what is good for us and live with our individual decisions, in politics we make a collective decision that everyone has to live with. Since the stakes are so high, we conservatives must ensure that we run as effective an election campaign as possible so that we can maximize our potential for winning and representing our constituencies. Our objective on election day in this all or nothing competition is to get ideally 50% plus one vote so that we can attain a majority government. The marketplace we compete in is far from ideal. There is a lot of clutter and noise, most people already have established opinions, and many just do not care. Like commercial campaigns, there are 3 phases. First, find our audience and understand them. Second, influence and persuade them to purchase our service. Third, mobilize them, close the deal, and get the vote. The campaign is not carried out in isolation from the world around us and from what has happened in the past. The campaign does not go from 0 to 100 kilometers an hour at the start of the campaign under the assumption that we can convince everyone to vote for us if we are good enough and we try hard enough. In reality, there is socio-political inertia present at the start of the campaign, which goes from 60 to 100, with a surprisingly low amount of ability to change direction. The key to the campaign is to safely get to the destination without crashing. Being popular and capturing mind share is not enough. Popularity alone, as indicated in surveys, does not win an election. Sure, the surveys indicate the mood of the general public towards you, but they do not indicate who will win the election because the election is dependent on how many take action. Winning requires mobilization of support into action. The winner of the election could be the 3rd most popular party, but the one that manages to mobilize the most supporters into action, to vote. So, what is brand and brand management, and how can it help me win the election? Well, first, let me say that brand is not the logo, the slogans, jingles, or sound bites. The true essence of a brand is not the emotional wrappers you choose for your communication strategy. That is just the shadow of the brand. The emotional wrappers are just triggers for the deeper relationship the voters have with the candidate. The true essence of brand is what you choose to stand for, your values. Your program and campaign are an extension of your values. The real test of brand, of values alignment, is whether I, the voter, feel good about myself supporting you, the candidate, to help me realize my aspirations. Summarizing, brand is the values at the heart of the party, at its very core. I said it in part 1, I'll say it again. Selling politicians is not much different strategically than selling soap. Understanding the basics. A political party is an organized group of people with similar political opinions and aims, representing a segment of the population that seeks to influence public policy by getting its candidates elected to public office. Parties are differentiated primarily on their vision, based on their values, which affect their positions on public policy priorities and civic needs. Quality of parties is determined by their ability to implement the policy changes that they promise to make. The politician is a service provider selling the service of governance. This governance service includes the skill set of managing the development and implementation of public policy and the vision for the direction the public policy should take. While the objective is to win the representation of the largest segment of the population, when elected, the party forming the government must govern in the best interests of all citizens in coordination with other elected parties. The government must work to give everyone the best possible service and experience. Brand equity is the sum of all goodwill that a brand enjoys from its customers based on the service it has provided in the past. In politics, I would say that brand equity is the goodwill which stimulates supporters to action the day before the campaign starts. Higher brand equity leads to a higher number of decided voters before the campaign starts, higher donation levels, and higher volunteer rates. High brand equity means that the election is won before the campaign even starts. Let's look at some brand management fundamentals in the commercial space and see if they apply in the political space. Brand theory indicates that the longer a person is influenced by advertising and other communications, and especially after they've been involved with a product or service, either first-hand or second-hand, purchase habits, preferences, and loyalties will develop. This is brand equity. Similar to the brand love curve, but a little bit more detailed, the brand equity cycle shows how customers may develop a relationship with the brand, going from not knowing anything about the brand to becoming advocates for the brand. The question now, does something similar to the brand love curve and the brand equity cycle exist in the political market? Based on one fact that we are all well aware of, I say that the concept of brand is very applicable to the political market. For all products and services, customers have pre-existing opinions that are developed over time. In politics, around the world in countries with multi-party systems, we see a phenomenon where between 45 to 60% of voters know on the first day of an election campaign who they will vote for, and for a large chunk of the voters, the campaign does not affect their voting allegiance. The election does not start with a clean opinion slate, and that is an effect of the brand concept. In the United States, we see this phenomenon in political party affiliation as well. When voters register, they indicate whether they are a Democrat, Republican, or an independent. Since 1972, the General Social Survey has been monitoring party affiliation in the USA, and there appears to be a branding effect. Over time, voters develop stronger affiliation to their party. In this chart, we can see that the older the voter, the stronger the affiliation they have. As the concept of brand and brand loyalty predicts, this set of opinions and predispositions built over an extended period of time is, in my opinion, the true gauge of political brand equity. Like commercial brands, political brands also rise and fall in popularity. Customers can lose faith in one brand or the entire industry. The Pew Center's study on voter affiliation mirrors what others also find. The younger the generation, the greater the political independence, with the young millennials having the highest independence levels and the lowest levels of party affiliation. Millennials are the most information-rich generation to date. They receive information from all directions, not just the official campaign media. While the Democrats appear to have held their ground, the Republicans have clearly lost. Support for the Republican Party is dropping consistently with each generation and every year. Understanding what has happened to the Republican Party's loss of popularity can help us better understand the branding phenomenon. One possible cause of the Republican decline is that they have had uncharismatic leaders over the last dozen years, leaders that could not connect with the people. Another possible and more probable cause is that they have not evolved with the times and the people. But brand is not affected by just the leader. It is affected by every touch point. It is affected by the entire team. The team is an extension of the leader and his values. If it took 10 years to erode the brand, how many years and how much effort will it take to rebuild the Republican brand? Everything is interconnected in Washington. The brands of the parties are affected by the brand image of the industry, which is affected by all politicians, including Republican and Democratic congressmen and senators. Studies by Gallup show that people are losing faith in the ethical standards of their members of Congress. Voter opinions have been dropping every year since 2000. Clearly, the people do not think highly of the industry as a whole. Washington is suffering significant brand damage. Congressmen and lobbyists scoring the lowest of all professions for honesty and integrity. What will it take? How many years and how much effort to rebuild the reputation of Washington and restore our faith in it? The ramifications are significant. When the people lose faith in your product, they stop buying it. In politics, when people feel disenfranchised, they stop participating. They stop voting. In the US, for about 40 years, more than 40% of the voting population has had no interest in voting. These voting statistics are similar in other democracies. Even Obama's stunning campaigns only managed to increase voter turnout by about 2% over the 56% voter turnout in the 2004 election where George Bush Jr. won. Vote for nobody, because only nobody cares about listening to you and keeping their promises. Frustration and disillusionment leads to low civic participation. How are you going to make things better? How will you help restore faith in the system? Be it business or politics, the key bit of information we must accept is that brand equity is hard to build, it can be lost very quickly, and is even harder to repair. So how long does it take to build brand equity? Barriers to entry for new political parties are quite high, maybe higher than the barriers to entry for new commercial products and services due to the risks involved with trying new ideas and parties. When I buy something at the store, I have a 30-day return policy. To return a political party, I need to wait years. Organization and funding are a hurdle, but the biggest hurdle to overcome is the development of brand equity, vision, wisdom, trust, and reputation. In multi-party systems like Canada and European countries, new parties require a number of election cycles to build credibility before they can garner enough support to become a force in government. That is, unless the party is started by a high-profile celebrity that already has a large amount of brand equity, like Beppe Grillo in Italy. In business, we understand that when we launch a product, there is a requirement for large amounts of upfront investment to develop the product, introduce it, and nurture it while it grows in the market. And then, if we are successful, we profit from that investment and risk. This could take months or it could take years. We are very familiar with the technology adoption curve, which illustrates how quickly people adopt tangible technologies. We are also familiar with the dreaded gap, which we must jump if we want to progress from the early adopter phase to the mass market phase. In management, there is a similar curve which illustrates that ideas and processes are adopted at a slower rate than technology. The risks associated with politics are greater, and risk-averse voters might not want to try something new and unproven. Unfortunately, many new parties run out of resources before they gain credibility and traction, before they can jump the gap and make it into the mass market. In Canada, we have a great example, a story of brand damage in a large party and the story of a political startup. The center-right Conservative Party, under the leadership of Brian Mulroney, suffered difficulties during the early and mid-80s, which eroded a lot of brand equity. Voters were disappointed and went from voting for the center-right to voting for the center-left liberals, and in 1993 the Mulroney Conservatives suffered a huge loss at the polls, reflecting the brand equity damage done over the last 4 years. The Conservatives, on their own, were not able to recover. Trying to fill the Conservative void was a new party from Western Canada, from Alberta, the Texas of Canada. The Reform Party was formed on the right, but voters that were disappointed with the center-right Conservatives instead voted for the center-left Liberals because the Liberals had credibility and experience. The mass market had no experience with Reform, and Reform had no brand equity. On its own, the Reform Party brand development was too slow and difficult because Reform was further right than what the mass of Canadian voters were used to. The only option for the right to get back into government was for a merger of the new Reform and the old Conservatives, shifting once again the brand story to reflect the values of Canadian voters. It took almost 15 years, but the brand damage was repaired, and the rebranded Conservative Party once again won a majority in government. We see similar brand development difficulties for new parties in the United States. In 1992, Ross Perot received 19.8 million votes, which accounted for about 18.9%, but he did not come close to winning. He did, though, manage to take votes from Bush Sr., allowing Clinton to win the election. In 2000, Ralph Nader received 2.9 million votes, or 2.7%, and this allowed George Bush Jr. to beat Al Gore. Today, the Tea Party, for all its publicity, has decided that the best way to influence politics is not to form a new party, but to try to influence and reform the Republican Party. I think it is safe to say that the concept of brand equity, and brand management do apply to the political market the same way they do to commercial goods and services. Political consumers, the citizens and voters, do form relationships with political parties. People develop strong opinions, emotions, and commitments towards their party, especially the feelings of being let down, betrayed, or disappointed. Branding might be even more important in the political market due to the greatly more complex nature of the product and the buying decision process. In the next part, part 3, we will look at brand management in politics. How do we actually do it? How do we define it, promote it, and earn brand equity?